Mario, bist verhutzt, Mario.
Terrible. I was in bed since Thursday night.
Oh, you feel better for Shleima.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov.
And Shavua Tov.
Hello.
I opened, and I think Ernie was doing something else, I guess. Okay. Do you know what we're up to? Are we Perek Dalit?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's been some rough week, right? Some terrible week. Ay. Be Mazel Tov again, Mazel Tov.
Thank you very much.
Mazel tov, Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you. Simcha by alle Eden.
Simchas by all. Simchas by all.
Are there any?
Bernie, thank you for that telephone that I got about the timing. Appreciate it.
Happy to send it to you.
Move over.
Thank you.
Tov.
Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov.
Nice, we have more people back.
Shavua tov.
What up?
First of all, it's very sad. One of our Navi participants, Ellen Graby, had passed away this week, and she was just a wonderful
Woman.
and a fantastic participant. Navi Shir, we will definitely miss her.
Yes. So sad. Can we dedicate this year tonight to her?
I think that's a good idea. We should dedicate the Shir tonight to her.
Alta Brina Bat.
Alta Brina Bat.
What's the Hebrew father's name?
Baruch Yehuda.
Thank you.
I think we left off on Pasuk Yud.
What perek are we on?
About Melachim Aleph, Perek Yudalid, Pasuk Yud.
Could you just summarize just briefly the beginning?
I will.
Ernie, thank you.
First of all, today, the Haftorah is a very rarely read Haftorah because normally Parshas Miketz is during Hanukkah. So the Haftorah is replaced by either Rosh Chodesh Haftorah or Hanukkah Haftorah. So if those of you noticed, it was the Haftorah that we all studied together about the two mothers who, Shlomo HaMelech makes the mishpat about dividing the baby in half to determine who the true mother is. And we just learned that a few months ago in depth. And when you try to think about the connection, the Haftoros, I was telling Bernie Monder this morning, were established during Roman persecution time, where they prohibited public reading of the Torah. And they would put officers in the synagogues. Maybe they were Mishrumadik Jews or whatever, who knew, whether they were, following the law or not. So Chazal instituted to lane haftaros. Haftarah was not, the Roman government, they knew that was not part of Chamisha Chumshei Torah, was not part of what is meant by the public reading of the Torah, Kriyas Torah. And the Rabbanon tried to find similar themes in a Haftorah. So by reading the Haftorah, they would evoke memories of the Parsha. Now, eventually, the shmad to read publicly went away. But the minhag to lane the Haftorahs remained. That's the origin of the minhag of Haftorahs that we have today. It's always interesting to look at the Haftorah and see what's the connection between the Haftorah and the Parsha. So the Haftorah started with Shlomo Melech waking from his dream. Remember, Shlomo Melech has a dream. He has a vision from Hashem about wisdom, that whole thing. So most people see the connection because then you have this story about the two women with the two children. What does that have to do with Parshas Miketz? So some say, well, it has to do with the dreams. Since Paro is dreaming and Yosef has to interpret the dreams, it's the dreams. But in the middle of the Parsha, it says, in the middle of the Haftorah, it says, Vanechmeru rachamav ala ben. The mother, on hearing that Shlomo Melech was going to cut the child in half, the real mother had rachmanis, Vanechmeru rachamav. That it's a phrase that her compassion overwhelmed her. Well, the exact same phrase is used in the Parsha. When Yosef sees Binyamin after 22 years, it says there, Vanechmeru rachamav al achiv. And then he turned and he cried. He went into another room and he cried. I think that's the connection. It's exactly the same words that you find there. Anyways, especially the Haftorah, whenever we encounter a Haftorah that we've learned together, it's always good to go through that. So for Barbara, I think it's a good idea, because we haven't learned for a week, that the son of Yeravam ben, we're dealing with the split of the kingdom, that the son of Shlomo Melech Rechavam, right, is now the king only of Yehuda and Shevet Binyamin. And the other 10 tribes have followed Yeravam. And Yeravam has prevented them from going to visit the Beis Hamikdash and to offer korbanos there. In fact, they've degenerated into Mamish Avodah Zarah. He put up these agolim, initially maybe L'Shem Shemaim, eventually became all Avodah Zarah. So the son of Yeravam got sick, Avia. So Yeravam asked his wife, go to Achia Hashiloni, the Navi, to maybe he can daven for her. And he now, the nevuah of the destruction of the 10 Shvatim, that the fact that we are called Jews because we're only from Judea, because the 10 tribes were taken captive by Sancheriv, by Assyria in 702 BCE. All of that was predicted by Achia Shiloni, telling the wife of Yeravam, who's going to go back but the nevuah, that there's going to be a destruction of the house of Yeravam and even the 10 tribes is now being revealed. And therefore, Pasuk Yud, Lachein hineni mevi ra'ah el beit Yeravam. I'm going to bring evil to the house of Yeravam. Vichrati li'ravam mashtin bekir. I'm going to destroy everything. Anyone who urinates against the wall. That's technically what that means, mashtin bekir, which means even down to a dog, or like all males, because males, they stand, to void, as opposed to sitting. Atzur va'azuv b'Yisrael. Anything that's stored or left over in Israel, nothing's going to be left. Uviarti achrei beis Yeravam. Yeravam kasher yivera galal atumo. Until somebody consumes his food until it's completely consumed. So, Mashtin Bakir in Baba Basra, there's a machlokas whether it's all males, a zachar, or a kelev, or any bardas, meaning any person with intelligence. Malbim says the same thing. The atzur is that which has been stored, the wealth that's been stored in the house, in the granaries. And the azuv are the livestock that's been left out in the field. All of that is going to be destroyed in the house of Yeravam. And some say, kasher yivayer galal. Galal refers to soa, refers to dung. And just like food is completely consumed until it's done, nothing's going to remain. Complete destruction. And even after the dung is gone, there's bad smell. You still need cleaning after that. So there's going to be a complete, utter destruction of the house of Yeravam. Other person learned pshat, just like we said before, eating and consuming. We talked about that women don't urinate against the wall. Only men do that. It's a very low description. And it's said like this on purpose.
It's all the male descendants of Yeravam. That's
Right.
what you're trying to say.
And this understanding that the decree was only against the males and not the females is a little difficult, because later on in Perek Tesvav it says Hikayat Kol Beit Yeravam Lo Yishir Kol Neshama Liravam Adish Mido Kidvar Hashem, implying every neshama was destroyed, including the female, not just the schar, but even the females.
Ernie, I just interrupt. I don't know who the source is that they interpret Mashim Bakir means anyone that possesses intelligence, one who puts any wisdom in the walls of his heart. So it could refer to anyone. So it encompasses anyone at all.
Right, because that the seichel is the highest attribute that a human being has. And that's why he's different than all other animals and plants. On the other hand, the seichel gets a person in trouble. He has gaiva, which was exactly the problem that led to Yeravam's downfall. And another remez here. Now, but the issue of the males, even though it looks that in essence everybody was killed, there's not going to be any mamshich to his kingship. He's not going to have any male yorshim. That only occurs by schorim, not by females. In the time of Malchus Yisrael.
Didn't we have queens in our history? Wasn't there
During Chashmona,
Hamashanaim? Mhm.
Hileni Hamalka.
Mhm.
But Malchus based David and Malchus Yisrael
It's
was
just one.
Only Melech ben Melech.
Mhm.
Okay. So the beginning is that Yeravam's house is going to fall. Pasuk Yud Aleph Hametz Yeravam Ba'ir Yochlu Klavim. And they will not be zocha to burial. The dead of Yeravam's family will be eaten by dogs. Sounds like a Game of Thrones episode, right? The corpses in the field are going to be eaten by the vultures. Ki Hashem diber. Mida Keneged Nibor, says the Kli Yakar. Yeravam was concerned about his covet, right? With the whole, remember me when Hashem invited him and Ben Ishai, he asked who's going to be in head. He didn't want to do it. So the final covet of a person is burial. So he wasn't even granted that. Pasuk Yud Beis. So the Navi Achia Shiloni tells the wife, At kumi lechi leveisech bevoach. You go back to your home. Raglecha ira umeisa yeled. When your feet hit the city, your son will already be dead. That's the shot from what he's being told. Yet we're going to see later on in the pasuk, it says Vatakam Eishes Yeravam Vatelech Vatavot Yitzasa. He ba besafa bayis vanarmes. That he only died when she got to the steps of the door. So the Malbim explains that no, in a chanami, the nar will die the moment she gets to the gate, but she won't hear about it until she gets to the safa bayis. Yud Gimel. V'savtu lo Yisrael ko Yisrael v'kavuoso. He will be Zoch, this son of Yeravam, to Hesped and Kvura. Ki zel levado yavo Yeravam el kever. This is the only ancestor of Yeravam's house who will be Zoch to be buried. Ya nimtza badovar tov el Hashem lo Yisrael b'veis Yerav. Something good was found in this son. Now we have to understand that kvura leads to kapara. So kvura is a good thing for the person who's maced. So this is a terrible punishment. Now most people at that time had carved out a personal family kever. Yeravam had done it for his mishpacha. But nobody else is going to be buried there, just him. And we see here, the Malbim points out, even Yeravam will not be Zoicha to Gvura here, in the place that he dug out for himself. In Moed Cotton, that points out that this son was also not a tzaddik, he was a Russian. Zavia ben Yeravam lo asa l'davar echad tov. Aval kiven da'ayim mibeis Yeravam shayim mesitin otzo makvin al yado hu amad bifneim hayazeh chashuv ma'od v'kiba schar alav. There was one instance where he prevented people from doing averis, and that was enough to give him kvura. It says in Moan Cotton, my davar tov. What was this davar tov? Rab Zera, Rab Chanina bar Papa, Chadamar shebitel mishmarto. That, remember we said that Yeravam had set up guards to prevent people to go aliyah l'regel, and this son was mevatel that. And others say shebitel pardeso shoshim Yeravam aviv al adrachim, or he got rid of the officers, the guards, the police that were preventing.
So Yerovam was buried or not?
Yeravam was not.
Because
And only
according to,
this son.
according
They're
to
dying from here, Tzvi. The cover also, ki ze levado yavo li'Yeravam.
no, according to the Malbim, זה לבדו יבוא לירבעם, meaning is going to accompany Yerovam to the caver, according to the Malbim. יבוא לירבעם, you mean he come to the caver with Yerovam.
But Tosfos and others learn that even Yeravam, so it's a machlokas, but others say, uvazehu diu shagam Yeravam yavo l'kvura. Oh yeah, Enochanami, I agree with you that he was going to be buried with Yeravam, and Yeravam is being informed here that he will also be zoich l'kvura. Not that he won't be, but he will be, like Tzvi said.
But you just read in the previous pasuk that he was going to be devoured by the birds of prey in the forest.
His family. There's all of his family.
House of.
Hameis li'Yeravam be'ir yochlok, because the klal has been given to his family, but he himself will be zoich l'kvura.
Why should he be Zohar?
Question.
No, so first, it was the son, this Avia ben Yeravam, who was zoich. We went through the Gemara, which said that the son had abolished, maybe for a period of time, the guards that were preventing people from going up and making aliyah. So that's a davar tov.
What was it? But the question is about Yerovam. What was his zechuyot that he got to be buried in a kever?
We're gonna go, so that we're gonna learn. We will have svaras for that as well. Later, we will, when we talk about his death and what happened to him, we will see why Yeravam was zoicha to kvura. By the way, in Hilchos Tshuva of the Rambam, Adam Shavanoisav Merubin al Zechuyosav. We go through this every year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. A person who has more avoinos than Zechuyos, miyad hu meis berisho. He has immediate death. V'chein Medina, Shavnoseh Merubin miyad hu oivedes. Even countries are judged every year, and if they have more avoinos, they're also destroyed.
But Yerovam was choti umachti as a rabbin.
So he doesn't have olam haba.
That's his
doesn't have
olam haba he lost. So,
But kvura he got. So what the Rambam is saying, only Hashem, like how do we calculate this? Guy was a Rasha, but he had one zechus. Yet he had a certain zechus to be buried. So the Rambam explains, Ein shoiklin ele bedato shokel deos. V'hu hayodea heich orchin hazechuyos keneged avonos. Only one divine mind has the ability to decide which zechus and which avon and how we go mida keneged mida. And Avia, his zechus, gave him burial. And you get zechus for even you get schar even for a small zechus. Everything is put into cheshbon. Listen to this, Chavrusa. Nidan aviu kitzadik machmes maisa achasazu. From this Rambam, on a certain level, this Aviu was treated as a tzaddik. The Zohar Chadar says that there's going to be two Mashiachs. We know about this. Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Right? One from the house of Yosef, one from the house of David. Mashiach Zu Da'anu Mashiach ben Yosef will come Mizer Yeravam ben Nevat. That it's going to be from Avia ben Yeravam. That before Avihu died, he had a child. They took him to a desert, and he didn't have the chet of Yeravam. So, Umashiach ben Yosef Yavo mi ben zeh. The eventual Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come from Avihu, this son of Yeravam.
They were all killed.
But this, except They can't all be killed if Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come from him. So the Zohar goes through that they scattered, that one of the children was taken out to the Midbar, and there he was kept hidden, and eventually had a family, and from there is going to be Mashiach ben Yosef. Yudalit. Veikim Hashem lo melech al Yisrael, asher yachrit et beis Yeravam ze hayom, umeh gamata. There will be a king appointed by Hashem who will get rid of Beis Yeravam. So it's going to happen through Malchus Yisrael.
It says
It won't be Malchus Yehuda. It'll be another Melech Yisrael that will wipe out Yeravam. Yes, Tzvi.
It says about the schus of the son of Yerovam that he did went to Beis Hamikdash, and like his father was blocking everybody to go, and he went to Ole LaRegel.
Yeah, he was mavatel the guards that were preventing the Jews from going.
Yeah.
That was his schus. So Basha HaMelech, we're going to learn later on, he's going to be the Melech that destroys Beis Yeravam. Now here comes, the punishment isn't just Yeravam. V'hikashem et Yisrael, kasher yanuda kaneba mayim. The imagery here is like a reed in water. V'natash et Yisrael me'al adama tova zot. And the Jewish people, I just want to translate Natash.
Uproot.
You will uproot from the ground, from Eretz Yisrael, Tova Zot, Asher Natan Lavotehem, V'zeira me'ever l'nar. They will be thrown from across the river. We know the river Sambatyon, right? Medrash tells us that the 10 tribes are found behind a river Sambatyon.
Gotcha.
Yan asher asuat asherehem machisim es Hashem. Because they built Asherah, Avodah Zarah trees that angered Hashem. So after this klola on Beis Yeravam, the klola on Beis Yisrael comes. The Nahar that's referred to as Nahar Gozen, because in Melachim Beis that we're going to be told that that's the river that they were taken. Now, the Yanuda Kaneh, a reed bends, right, with the wind. It doesn't break. Gave him this imagery because he wanted to tell them you still have the ability to do tshuva. But they didn't do tshuva. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kofei Amud Beis. Amr Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amr Rav Yochanan. Toiva klala shekila l'achia shiloni et Yisrael, yoter mi bracha shebircham bila marosha. Greater is better is the curse that Achia Shiloni cursed Klal Yisrael here than the bracha that Bila Marosha gave us. Achia Shiloni kilelit Yisrael bekaneh. He cursed us with the imagery of a reed. Ma kanazeh omed b'mokamayim. A reed grows in any water. V'gizo machlif, and its bark changes. V'sharshav merubin has deep roots. All the wind in the world come and blow it. It cannot uproot it. It blows with the wind, but then comes back. If the wind stops, the reed is back. Bilam used the imagery of a cedar tree. It doesn't grow in a place of water, so therefore it's hard to nourish it. It doesn't have a lot of roots. If its bark doesn't change. Afilu kol arucha shabos ba'olam v'noshavos bo ein mazizos o mimkomo. Most winds will not affect it. Even shenishbar aruach droimis, a southern wind comes, miyad okarto v'ofachto alpono. It can flip it on its face. V'lo'od, zocha kana lito mimenu kumus, lichtov mimenu sifrei Torah nevim uksuvim. A reed can be transformed into a pen, which can write Sifrei Torah. So why did the Gemara add this special nature of a reed? This is very important. Limud HaTorah shel Yisrael begalut hu yisod shel kiyum shel Yisrael. So here it's talking about that eventually Klal Yisrael is going to go into Golus. And the imagery that was used was a reed. And what's going to keep Klal Yisrael around in the Golus? The Torah. Certainly, Talmud Bavli was created there because of so the klal of Achia was greater than the bracha of Bila. Now, why were the Asara Shvatim sent into Golus? From this pasuk, it seems that they worshipped the Asherah tree. Well, what about these Agolim? Remember that Yerovam put up Agolim. I thought they were worshiping there. And later on it says, "Vayitenit Yisrael biglal chatot Yerovam asher chatav asher chtiet Yisrael," which seems to imply that the Jewish people were punished because they went after Yerovam. It has nothing to do with the Asheros, but the Agolim. So, really, they were punished for the Asherah. They were not punished for because they were seduced to do it by Yeravam. They were anusim, they were considered like forced. But here it describes that they built the Asherahs. Asher asuas Ashram. They did the Asherah trees on their own. That was not Yeravam telling them to do that. So later on, the Chet HaGolim is thrown with them because it showed that really they had an atiyah towards it. But it's the fact that they were Mosif, the Asherahs showed that they were not anusim, they were not being forced by Ram to worship it.
I think the imagery of the reeds and they can be knocked down, but the roots are still there and they can regrow. It's like, is there a reference to Netzach Yisrael? Ultimately, we can be beaten down and destroyed, but we'll never be destroyed. The future of the Jewish people is forever.
And the roots that are in the water sustains the reed, whereas when the cedar that's only near the water, so it can't sustain itself. So it is an indication of resilience and Netzach Yisrael, as Bernie had said.
I want to go through an Abarbanel who reveals something fascinating to us. 702 BCE, Sancheriv comes and takes the Asar Shvatim to Golus. And we've lost them. They've never returned. We're going to learn Yirmiyahu Navi, we're going to see he brought back some of them. And Yoshua Melech ruled over them. But Shevet Yehuda has never been destroyed. Wherever they went, they were kept intact. Why? So the Abarbanel says like this. Mida keneged mida. This is so important for our day. Heim azvu Beit Hashem HaKayam. There was a Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim during the time of the Asar Shvatim, and they voluntarily abandoned it. Vayelchu achrei avalim hahem. Lachem gam heim yelchu v'yinodu kasher yinorakonu b'mayim. Heim azvu Yerushalayim Beit HaMikdash. Dam Hashem yisbarach yitshem me'alad masam. It was because they lacked their connection with the Lion and Beis HaMikdash. Hare the chelik shel amida keneged mida. Hayta onesh b'ma she'azvu et Yerushalayim u'veit hamikdash. V'al yedei zeh nekru legamri min haaretz. The two lo nimtzav al shevet Yehuda lo azvu et Yerushalayim. V'hagalut hayta onesh rak al chatoim acherim. The fact that Yehuda and Binyamin, they had to go into all different, but lefichach nisharu kayamim. They never abandoned Jerusalem, the Beis Hamikdash. And I thought to myself, Theodor Herzl called the new movement to return to Israel Zionism. Zion, Zion. Zion is a word for Yerushalayim. He wasn't the Talmud Chacham. He didn't know what he was doing. But it's very interesting that it's the connection to Zion. The Abarbanel is pointing out that allowed Yehuda, because the tribes of Judah remained connected to Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash. So, and that's why it was so important, I think, in 1967, during the 6-Day War, when Yerushalayim was reunified. All of it, I mean, how many people visited Israel between 1940 and 1967? Yes, I hear stories from people. Yeah, I went to visit maybe when I was a bar mitzvah, whatever. But the big resurgence of just people going to Israel, visiting Israel, etc., have people having more Zionistic feelings. The whole Baal Tshuva movement was exploded. Chabad, JD, everything. The Jewish identity rose tremendously. When we got Yerushalayim back.
But it wasn't, it was just also the pride.
Very prescient. Yes, Barbara.
But Ernie, it was also, I think, the pride that we had in terms of the victory, and it was also miraculous, and it was so against typical military predictions. So I think the pride, it wasn't just Yerushalayim, but the pride of, the army or so whatever was incredible.
But listen, these are the words of the Abarbanel, written 1490.
Wow.
Who sees who asks the question, why are these 10 tribes gone and the other 2 tribes not gone? So the other 2 remain connected to Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash. So that's why they have, like Bernie said, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. And we have to think about also why, yes, there were a lot of reasons after 67, but it's Yerushalayim. Herzl called it Zionism. The return to Israel wasn't just a return to Jerusalem, but somehow in the word itself is this remez that it's the Jewish people's connection to Yerushalayim that's at the heart of survival. Tet Zayin. V'itenet Yisrael biglal chatos Yeravam asher chata v'asher echtias Yisrael. You see, it's not just the Asheros. The 10 tribes are being punished because they followed Yeravam as well. But again, like we just learned above, when they started building their own Asheros trees, they could have claimed that they were forced with the Agolim of Yeravam, that he was machti them, they didn't do it from their Ratzon. But now that they added Asherah trees, there's a Gilui Das, that they're happy with Avodah Zarah, and they're not Anusim. And now they get the final part. Barbanel also says, these people were the ones who chose Yeravam to rule over them. So they have to blame in that as well. Okay, Yud Zayin. Vataka Meshes Yeravam, Vatelech Vatavot Tirtzasa. She went to their city, Tirtza. He bought the Safabayis Van Armes. The moment she stepped in the house, the child died. Vaikberu also. Vaispedulo Kol Yisrael. Interesting. What normally is the order? First we do a hesped, then we do a kvur. But here, Vaikberu also, Vaispedulo Kol Yisrael. Kidvar Hashem asher diber, biyad avdo Achia Hanavi. Just the way Achia Hanavi predicted, there was kvura.
Isn't that the same order as Avram Avinu? He buried Sarah Imenu, and then after that,
Lispod v'lisara v'liv kosa. Lispod v'lisara v'liv. First there was a hesped, then he buried her.
didn't we hear a Dvar Torah on that someone, it was reversed? Maybe not, okay.
No, first he gives the, okay. The normal Jewish minig is first we're maspid, then we're koifer. Here we see it's not the Seder Rogil. So what they did, and the Meforshim explained, in Echanami they were maspid before, but even after the Kvur they were maspid again. When the Jewish people heard that he was Zoichet to Kvura, there was reasons for the rest of the Jewish people to join. Good test. V'yeser divrei Yeravam asher nilcham. Other battles that Yeravam did. Asher Malach. Other things in his kingdom. Hinam ksuvim al sefer divrei hayamim l'malchei Yisrael. That's a history book. We're not talking about divrei hayamim that Ezra right? And Mirz Hashem we will learn. This was a different sefer that the Malchei Yisrael had. We don't have it anymore. The Even Ezra explains that. Yirmiyahu Navi wrote Sefer Melachim. He's telling us here, that which is written here was told to Yirmiyah ben Nevuah. And all these other things that happened to Yeravam, there was no point for Doros to know about it. And I have no tainus, says Yirmiyahu Navi, that other people are going to write other things. Yirmiyahu is writing things that are told to me ben Nevuah. Someone who wants to know history can read Josephus Flavius. There was a sefer Divrei Yamim L'Achei Yisrael that they could read other historical events of Yeravam. The Meforshim say we don't have that sefer in our hands. V'Yamim Asher Malach Yeravam Esrim U'Shtayim Shana. Yeravam ruled 22 years. V'Yishkav Im Avosav. Vayimloch Nadav b'no Tachtav. And the Malbim, and by Pasuk Yugimel was medayek from that klala that Yeravam would get buried, and that the klala where people would not get buried would be his ancestors, not him. And this word Vayishkav Avotav referred to Kvura, that he was buried. Now normally it says Kavru Oso Im Avoisa. But they didn't say that here. So the Igra de Pirka says that normally they buried people and then the flesh would get disintegrated. Then they would move the bones to the final resting place, which was where the family was. But he never was zoicha to that because Ido Hanavi had predicted B'Nevuah that Yoshua Melech is going to burn all the bones of all the people who worship Avodah Zarah. So Yeravam himself, during Yoshua Melech, his bones are going to be burned. So he was never zoicha to Kvura Im Avoisa. Just Shchiva. For temporarily he was buried to fulfill what Achia Shalom said. But he didn't have Kvura Oilamis. He was just temporary. Now, I was waiting for one of you to ask the question. When it says Vayishkavim Avosav, usually that means they're with their forefathers in Gan Eden. But Sanhedrin, Tzadik Amar Aleph in Perek Chelek, Yeravam is Echad Mishloshim Malachim De'en Lo Chelek L'Olam Haba. So, what do you mean he was in Gan Eden? So no. That the Zohar says, Atid hu litaken b'Mashiach ben Ephraim, kimo she'amra mukubalim, kivin she'amra v'shchiva mavoisa. There's a remez that there will be some tshuva by Yeravam. Okay. That's how they answer that question. Now, Yeravam has died. We've had a klala to the Jewish people who lived under the Aseret HaShvatim that they're going to be nigla. So the Perek takes a tangent. We go back to Rechavam ben Shlomo, Malach ben Yehuda ben Arbaim va'achas. Rechavam ben Shlomo Malach ben Yehuda ben Arbaim va'achat shana Rechavam ben Balcho. He was 41 years old when he was appointed king. Ushva shana malach b'Yerushalayim. He ruled for 17 years. Ha'ir asher bachar Hashem lasum et shmo sham, the city that Hashem chose to put his name there. Mikol Shiftei Yisrael v'shem imo Na'ama ha'amonit.
Isn't that a bit awkward? Like the placement of that?
What do you mean? The name of his mother?
Maybe his mother at that point. I don't know. The information. I don't know.
Okay.
Seems
so
awkward.
let's analyze that. So number one, some of Forshim note that we're told that he's 41 years old because Pirkei Avos says, Arboim Labina. So he was of the age where he should have been able to choose properly between good and bad. That's what Bina does. We're going to see the first 3 years of his kingship was good, and then it changed. And exactly as Barbara pointed out, the reason why his mother, Nama Amoinis, is put here, because he followed the actions of his mother, who was worshiping Avodah Zarah when Shlomo Melech was getting old. And she advised him to go bad. And he eventually worshipped Avodah Zarah too. So Shlomo Melech married Nama a year before he ruled, because Rechavam is 41 years old. Shlomo Melech ruled for 40 years. He was 12. And there's no sin in Shlomo marrying Nama the Ammonis, because it says, Lo yavo Ammoni, B'kal Hashem, but not Ammonit. That's why David HaMelech also is not a problem, because Rus was a Moavi, v'lo Moavid. And she converted Ledin, and he had Kiddushin v'Nisuin, Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. Now, these Meforshim that say that Rechavam went bad because his mother influenced her, we have a problem. There are many of us here tonight that are in the Daf Yomi. Just a few days ago in Baba Kama, what did we learn? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shtei Freidos Tovis Yesh Li Lahotzi Mahen. In the psukim that describe Klal Yisrael coming into Eretz Yisrael with Moshe Rabbeinu, so they were told not to do battle with Ammon and Moab. Remember, they wiped out Sichon, Melech HaEmori, and Og, Melech HaBashan, but they were told not to do battle with Ammon and Moab. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, there are two, like birds or precious things that I need to take from Ammon and Moab.
Yeah, no.
Rusa Moaviyah, the Nama Ammonis. Moshe and Klal Yisrael were told not to wipe out Ammon and Moab, because otherwise there wouldn't be Rus and there wouldn't be Nama. So from there comes out that both Rus and Nama were good, not bad. So the Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky explains, there were a lot of good kings that came from Rechavam. Asa Melech, Chizkiah Melech, Tzidkiah Melech, Yoshua Melech. All of Malchus Beis David dynasty comes from Nama Ammonit. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says, even though she might not have been a tzaddikus, she has schus that Klal Yisrael should not have destroyed Ammon because of that. Some say that Nama herself was not a convert. Her grandmother or mother had converted already. And that the bad influence was not from Nama, but from the mother or the grandmother, that she remained at tzaddikus. That's what Emes Liakov says. We learned another interesting Gemara in Baba Kama. Amrav Chia Barav Amrav Yeshua ben Korcha. La'olam yagdim adam ledvar mitzvah. A person should always rush to do a mitzvah. שבשביל לילה אחת, שקדמוסו בחירה לצעירה, the one night that the elder daughter preceded the younger daughter, we're talking about Lot and his two daughters. After the destruction of Sodom, they thought that the world had been destroyed. All they saw was utter destruction. So they wanted to keep pru vu. They said, who's gonna? So they had proper kavanah when they slept with their father. And in fact, the older one did it first because she is Moab. And because she jumped and did the mitzvah first, Kadmasa Arba Doris Yisrael. You had the son of Ruas Oived, Yishai, David, Ushlomo. There were already 4 generations Jewish. Ilut Seira, the younger, was Ammon, didn't have schus to have a Jewish child, Ad Rechavam. So, 2 answers to Barbara's question, why Nama Ammoni's name is put in it, come to teach us different things. I'm not going to go into, there's a halachic debate in the Rambam whether a Jewish king needs both parents to be Jewish, or is enough for just one, meaning originally Jewish, not a ger. And there's a machlok, I don't think we have to go through that. Some say if it's a melech ben melech, like Rechavam ben Shlomo, then even if the mother is a gioris, it works. But if it's not a melech ben melech, if it's an initial coronation of a king, then both parents have to be fully Jewish. Now we don't have the psukim and divrei yomim here, but the first 3 years of Rechavam's rule are described very accurately in divrei yomim. He built up the country. He made the cities with walls. It describes there that all the Levim and the Kohanim moved to Jerusalem because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to work in the Beis HaMikdash. This is all we learn in Divrei Yomim, in these psukim about Rechavam. And it talks about Rechavam marrying, having children. He married Macha bas Avshalom. He had 18 wives and 60 pilagshim. He had 28 sons and 60 daughters.
Ernie, can I just ask you a question? In terms of the worshiping of idols, it was very, very intense during these times. What does the Torah or Gemara say regarding this strong wanting to strongly serve idols, to follow?
Okay, it's a very good question. Very good question. I'm going to answer it in the following way. The Michtav Meliyahu, Rav Leo Dessler, whose family now lives in Cleveland and they're part of the Jewish community there. But the Michtav Meliyahu is a very important philosopher, thinker over the last few hundred years. And he describes the following. He talks about the concept of zeh le'umat zeh, pasuk in Kohelet. This versus this. What does that mean? So we all have free will, bechira. But it has to be an even playing field. Otherwise, we don't get credit for the good choices we do. So, for example, a malach sees Hashem, he says, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. He has nothing else to, he has no free will to say anything else. So he doesn't get credit for seeing the Kedusha of Hashem. We do, because we have a Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. But there has to be an even playing field. So in the time of Bnei Yisrael, Beis HaMikdash, Nevuah, so they had open dialogue with Hashem. Very high level of spirituality. So if Koach HaTuma was not powerful, the Michtav Meleo explains, the Jewish people could not get Schar V'Onesh. Because the level of Kedusha was so high, these Avodah Zaras also had power. We don't understand that today, but Menashe Melech, there's a Gemara that describes Rava, like Menashe Melech eventually worshipped Avodah Zarah, and the Gemara like chastises him, and then Menashe appears to Rava in a dream and says, you know, if you would be in our time, you would have picked up your toga and run after the Avodah Zarah just as well. It had power. Now, how can I make it explain a little bit better? When Klal Yisrael came back after 70 years of Golus, the Sanhedrin davened that the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah should be removed, and was removed. Then they said, okay, let's take the Yetzer Hara away for sexuality. They did it, but the problem was the chickens didn't lay eggs, and no one had, so they had to bring that back. Okay, so we all know lust. We all know what the Avodah Zarah, we all know what desire is for sexuality. Maybe we knew it better when we were younger. We all know what that is. That's how powerful. Now, when you're in Alaska and you drive and you see a totem pole, do you have any desire to go out and worship the totem pole? No. You know what? Because that Yetzer Hara has been removed from us. That Gemara is a reality. We don't have now, I'm not talking about those people that say, oh, television is today's Avodah Zarah, or money is today's Avodah Zarah. No. Let's talk about real Avodah Zarah, like an idol, voodoo, or whatever. Who has Yetzer Hara for that? Because we don't have it anymore. But we do understand desire. So that's how these things had power over people. Because if you didn't, then going to the Beis Hamikdash, you wouldn't have gotten credit for it. You had to choose between Kedusha and so Koach HaTuma was very strong.
Had to equalize the spirituality.
I've always found that explanation of Mechtamel is a very powerful explanation. I think there's emes to it. And that explains your question. Why do they have so many problems with Avodah Zarah? And we don't have that now. We have our own problem. But that was because of that time. And the Zelum, okay. So we have a few more psukim, but I will keep this for next week. And we'll start Mirz Hashem, we'll end Perek Yud Daled.
But we're gonna be around it.
But basically, what I wanted to say is the first 3 years of Malchus Rechavam, there was peace, and they all worshipped Hashem. The next, after the first 3 years, then the last few psukim of this Perek will tell us what happened, and then we'll start Perek Tesvav.
Can I keep you 1 minute and ask you a question about you saying that the 10 tribes after what happened with Yeravim, they all disappeared, they were all punished, and we lost them. So that you're talking about Netzach Yisrael, just Yehuda and Binyamin. But so what is the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef? What is the Mashiach ben Yosef's role if they're all gone and will not be recovered? I always thought that Mashiach ben Yosef meant that the lost tribes will be identified and will somehow come back as well.
So first of all, I would say, because I've seen this written, there are remnants of every tribe among Klal Yisrael. Like my great Reb Shimon Yaroslavler, I'm a descendant of Reb Shimon who lived in Yaroslav. He writes in his writings that he feels he's from Shevet Naphtali. He had some Masorah, whatever, that he was from Shevet Naphtali. So there are remnants of all the Shvatim among Klal Yisrael. That's so as a group they were taken away, but there are probably remnants of everybody somewhere. We just don't know. We don't know who our individual yichus is. And yes, there will be. So some used to argue. I heard it argued. Theodor Herzl was Mashiach ben Yosef, or Mashiach ben Yosef is not going to be a person. It's going to be like an episode, like the founding of the state of Israel. Maybe a Mashiach ben Yosef process. You know, but on the other hand, it says Mashiach ben Yosef is going to be a person who's going to die. And then Mashiach ben Yehuda will, not. That'll come later. So I don't have clarity yet. I mean, in those issues, maybe we will when we get to a certain sugya, but it's just something that I've learned over the years. But the, there, I think there is such a concept that the Asor Shvatim. By the way, the Bnei Menashe in India, right? There's a whole group in northern India that the research have identified that they're probably the tribe of Menashe. And the Pashtuns, there's 15 million, I saw a documentary once. There are 10 to 15 million Pashtuns that live in Afghanistan. It's a tribe. And they're the Bnei Ephraim, the Pashtuns. They have some kind of Masorah. And maybe other of the Shvatim, because listen, Sancheriv was Assyria. So he took them east. He took them towards Bavel and then further east towards Afghanistan and maybe to India. That makes sense as to where they may have been. Okay.
Shkoyach.
Okay,
Everybody
Shkaya.
have a great
Have-
week.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It was.
You, Shavua.
Thank you very much.